Nigeria's Finance Minister, Kemi Adeosun, has revealed federal government's intention to carry over at least 60% of 2017 capital projects to 2018 fiscal year.
Well, this is as only 15% of the 2.2 trillion naira voted for capital expenditure in the 7.44 trillion naira 2017 budget of recovery and growth has been implemented so far. Now, the finance minister says the federal government has so far released the sum of 440 billion naira to fund capital projects.
Adeosun also revealed that cumulative releases on current expenditure so far is 1.5 trillion naira. The minister said the 128 billion naira out of the 434 billion allocated has been released for statutory transfers.
Well, the 2017 budget was passed by the National Assembly in May and signed into law by the then acting President Yemi Osinbajo in June. Well, about 5 months after the 2017 budget was signed into law, how well has it performed so far?
Yes, like they say, how much progress can you make really if you don't go back to assess
exactly
you know, how the journey
how do you move forward if
how
you
do you
don't
move
look back?
forward if you don't look back? That's the point. And
yes,
many of course have been saying that look, the 2017 budget has only recorded 30% success rate. So what is the guarantee that 2018 would not, you know, toe the same line at the end of the day?
Well, federal lawmakers have described as hopeful the parameters of the 2018 budget presented by President Muhammadu Buhari, but say that they won't hurriedly pass the document without much scrutiny like they did with the 2017 budget.
Now, the senators and representatives urged the presidency to ensure that 2017 projects are rolled over into the 2018 budget as agreed, as many lawmakers are angry over poor implementation.
The MDAs are going to be called upon to defend their budget, which is our usual ritual here when you bring a new budget. What are they going to be defending? So we need to know how much has been released to them. Today what we are aware is most of them have not gotten up to even 10% releases. So what are they going to be defending? And then we're going to pass a new one?
President's team, in their wisdom, told us in the chambers that about 60% of those projects that have already been funded to a certain level this year will be rolled over till next year. No budget, no project is going to be removed.
Of course, now we have a guest in the studio.
Yes, indeed, and he's Abayomi Obabolujo joining us. He's a financial expert. Thank you so much for joining us. President Muhammadu Buhari, in reeling out the 2018 budget, did not, you know, spare. But actually, he spent a lot of time looking back at the 2017 budget before going into the 2018. He did say that 2017 was a year of uncertainties on many fronts, like Brexit, of course, crisis on the Korean Peninsula, you know, recession and all of that. But there is hope. This 2018 budget will be a budget of consolidation, but that's not what we're talking about. We're looking at the performance of the 2017 budget. From where you're standing, how do you think the 2017 budget did?
Of course, it's generally known that the level of performances of the budget in 2017 was largely poor. More so that formal or official information as far as the budget performances so far had been relatively scanty. As at today, let's say as at September, which was the beginning of the, I mean, about the last month of the third quarter, the only information you could access formally on the performances of the 2017 budget was actually as at March, which means that as we speak, there are no formal data on the performances as at half year, and of course, the third quarter.
Well, President Buhari yesterday talked about, said that about 450 billion naira had been released,
which is just
out of 2.2
which is
trillion
just
naira,
about
with the promise
30%.
that it will get to like 50% implementation by December.
See, this is what I'm saying. Ideally, in a formal setting, the budget office, all right, ought to have released formal performance data. What the president came to do yesterday, or what the president did yesterday, was just a summary. Because again, you cannot begin to talk about 2018 budget without having to make mention of certain indicators in the 2017 budget. So we really cannot take strictly the statements of the president to have amounted to full information on the level of performances of 2017.
But what about the statement of Finance Minister in October? She and Udoma were summoned by the Senate, and then they were worried that it was just 15% implementation.
Basically, on first quarter official data released.
Yes.
All right. So as at that time, we could see, because if you look at it, yes, largely the economy is not actually dying. The economy is largely gradually improving, right? Because we entered into 2017 in a recession. But as at September, it was formally announced that the country is out of recession.
Crawled out of recession.
All right? So you look at inflation as at the beginning of this year, we are talking about inflation almost 19%.
True.
But as we speak now, it's relatively lower than 16%, maybe around 15.8, 15.9 or thereabouts.
That's inflationary.
Yes.
Of course, the CBN says by mid-2018, it should come down to a single digit.
That is forecast now.
That's the forecast.
You talk about the stock market, where actually belong, basically. So far this year, the Osha index of the Nigerian Stock Exchange has reported in almost 38%. All right, the economy is gradually moving on. And if you look at the performances of companies quoted and listed on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, many of them have just released their third quarter reports.
Yes.
Those reports were not actually looking bad, basically.
But some opted for the delisting.
You see, delisting is not because they are not doing well.
Okay.
All right, there are so many factors that could lead you to taking the decision to delist from the stock exchange or not. And not that alone, the stock exchange can actually delist. If you fail as the managers of a quoted company to perform according to the listing rule, they might decide, for example,
of course,
now if your results are
actually
not
happened
seen in the market, so they can actually get you delisted. But
happened,
basically,
the
performances of the budget of 2017 so far, so good, has been below 30%, if you ask me.
And 30% is good enough?
Well, you see, you can't say by any standard that 30% is good enough, in the sense that if you score 30%, that is fair. I don't know the rating now.
But
maybe we'll have
F9. But would you blame the government, the executive, really, for this? Because it took the National Assembly a lot of time.
You see, this thing is not just starting. If you have taken time to look at previous administration in this country, you see the reading out of budget pronouncement is just like an annual ritual. The way I see this thing is that, well, let them just come, tell the public anything, all right? And then they, at the end of the day, will still go on and do whatever they desire. Because, you see, in Nigeria, we have this thick skin. Whatever our government does, we, so far, so good, have been able to cope. Like I told you now, what are the parameters to say that this, or how do you conclude that a budget that is performing at about 30% level, all right, yet at the same time there are positive indicators?
So what does that really say for us? I mean, well, President Buhari did say that the government took the right decisions, meaning that the outcomes that we have so far are a vindication that both the fiscal aspect and the monetary aspect seem to have converged, even though financial and economic experts have been saying the fiscal side has been lacking. So
they are looking at it.
So what are some of those decisions really that would indicate to you that yes, this government got it right?
This is the way it is. Let us assume that you are a parent, and then you have your children in school, and then you choose. I'm not saying just for the sake of example now. You are not doing what you should as a parent, but your children now decided on their own to do more, and because of that, their results, their performances in the school are now coming, and they are a lot better than what the expected to do.
So
right?
the parents can't take credit.
You can't take the glory.
Okay.
So the glory of what we see within the Nigerian economy now should probably be arrogated to the resilience of the Nigerian populace. Then the resilience of the Nigerian business people. How much were you buying fuel before? How much are you buying it now? Then irrespective of that, those of us in business are still trying to manage,
the adjustments.
to cope, not because the government has done all that they ought to do, not that the government has fixed all the roads they ought to do, whether the roads are still bad, whether they are still they are even worse than they were. You still have to maintain your vehicle.
So the government is practically taking glory for doing nothing.
For doing nothing.
Okay, now when the finance minister and Udo Uduma, the budget man, were summoned in October by the Senate for poor implementation of the 2017 budget, they said something, and it was somehow to many Nigerians that they said that they wouldn't be able to carry out the projects quoted in the 2017 budget anymore because they were still waiting for approval of the National Assembly for loans. So why would the government somehow predicate its capital exactly on
the question we should also ask
and then
them
mid-year, almost every time, annually, mid-year, they are stuck. They will have to go back to the National Assembly to get funds.
These are the critical issues. That's why I say they are arrogating glories to themselves that actually do not belong to them. Now you want the National Assembly to approve loan for you without you coming to specifically state what you did with the previous allocations to you. So these are the issues we have. That is not to say that we want to exonerate the National Assembly too, because if you recall that when this 2017 budget in question was presented, they kept going forth and back, removing and adding, and then adding what they are not supposed to do. And so when the budget ought to have been passed, all right, they are still there debating on it. At the end of the day, before you say...
And the country was suffering, and the country was in recession.
That is what is expected, all right? Because they have their own personal issues, then we now have to talk about the executive. More so, for the better part of the year, anyway, we are all human. The president was out of the country. And you even remember...
But somebody was in charge while he was away. But let's bring it down to figures now. Non-oil sector rose to 0.45% in the second quarter of 2017. Of course, the government is marking itself well in that area. And they're saying it was driven by financial capacity building and infrastructure development. How realistic, really?
Not realistic. Because one, the global price of crude is not dependent on the federal government of Nigeria. The only area I would say they have largely done well is to maintaining peace and tranquility, particularly in the Niger Delta area. But again, when they are making their forecast and expectation against 2018, you will also now begin to see certain errors there, in the sense that there are agitations now within that region.
And you're estimating 2.3
which might eventually impact
barrels.
negatively on the performances of 2018 budget. All right, so it is good enough that to a large extent the global price of crude is working in favor of
and
Nigeria.
it's going up now, $64.
Yes, it's working in our favor.
So would you say that the $45 benchmark for 2018 is a realistic figure?
I think it is realistic, but again, like I said, it is not only the global price of crude that will ensure that we make the best of the happenings in the global market.
Internal issues.
Yes, internal arrangements. What if the government is not able to quell the growing agitations in that region? You will now say that, well, maybe we are supposed to produce X barrel of oil per day, and we are not able because of the aggressiveness in that region. So they must, of necessity, look into that.
All right. Now, looking at another statement made by Adio, she said 60% of the budget for capital expenditure would be rolled over to the 2018 budget. Of course, that is not the news. The news is, does that ever happened? The 2016 budget wasn't fully implemented. Now we are talking about 2017 budget. They always promise to roll back to the next year, to add that, whatever that was not done, to the next budget. But somehow you don't see that happening. And then somehow the money disappears.
Well, let us say, for the sake of, let us for once give some respect to the president, that his anti-corruption stance will come to play this time around. Often he's been criticized that we have not seen enough of that. But one thing again that one might likely say so much about this government is that there's not free flow of free funds, all right, as we have seen in the previous administration, particularly in this government. Yes, we might say that the anti-corruption stance had not been well implemented relative to our expectation, but to a large extent, we can't say that the rate at which you see money flowing, you see Ghana must go being distributed, particularly in the National Assembly, just because they want to see one policy or something of such.
Maybe corruption went digital.
Well, if corruption had gone digital, we would not relatively see the seeming performances we are seeing.
Because we know the accusations leveled against the NNPC and the alleged $25 billion still in question.
On the achievements or otherwise of the 2017 budget, how much was achieved in the solid minerals sector, considering that some 30 billion naira was set aside for the so-called SMDF?
Well, to a large extent,
was it really reflected that the government Buhari talked about the 600,000 metric tons of bitumen that's imported yearly, and that with this 30 billion will be able to actually save Nigeria a whole lot of funds.
Fortunately, I'm from Ondo State, and I can tell you a little bit about bitumen. So if the minister is coming to say that and the president is saying that, the question is that since this government came into power in 2015 till now, not a pin has been dropped in the southern part of Ondo State, where I am from, and I can tell you that on authority. And I know that in the last couple of weeks, the state governor had met with the president, and then we now we saw it being read out. But the question that someone asked was that, really not, Mimico was there as at the time this government came to power, all right? And then there were also the promises, as a matter of fact, as at 2016, all right? But between that 2016 and 2017, nothing has been done. You see, and when you put all this together...
So what you're saying is that Ondo State has not seen any part of this 30 billion
We haven't seen. All right, these are things that are verifiable anyway. Okay, if these things had started, there would not be the need for the governor of the state to now begin another visit to the president, trying to encourage him, or I think he was even at the meeting in company of the solid mineral minister, right? They were there together. So we only hope, all right, as we had always hoped, okay, that before the end of 2018, maybe Ondo State will have started seeing some works as far as
there is always the issue of special intervention fund, not even implemented up to a quarter of it, and Nigeria now is really in poverty according to international index.
But you know that
we have to wrap it at this time.
One thing that the government was able to do, they were able to fund the deficit. Quite a number of times they were out of the country within the year to borrow. And those bonds were well oversubscribed.
And they still want to borrow
anyway.
As
far as borrowing is concerned, they have done well.
All right.
But implementation and judicious use of such.
Okay, thank you very much, Abayomi Obabolujo. Thank you for your analysis. You're a financial market analyst. Thank you for coming.